Heather. Your thoughts on markets and whether or not we're going to see this nervousness continue, even though now we've got a little more clarity on where the Fed might be going.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think the markets will continue to be volatile, but it was just such an amazing move to bounce off the lows of 780-point decline on the Dow yesterday. And the markets were telling us maybe it's not about trade and the arrest of Huawei's CFO, that maybe it's all still about the Fed, because after we got the report from the Wall Street Journal, the wait-and-see approach, that's when the markets really came off the lows. So that's telling me it may still be about the Fed.
And now this brings us to the jobs numbers today, because the Fed is saying we're data dependent. They're going to raise rates in December, by the way, but after that, our moves are going to depend on how the economy does. If we get a gangbuster number today, then maybe the Fed says game on, we keep raising interest rates. Yeah. But if the number's a little on the soft side, then that confirms the economy is starting to see some headwinds.
Well, if it's on the soft side, I think markets will fall out of bed again, because the fact is, look, the Fed might be out of the way based on what came out yesterday as a wait-and-see approach. So the better the data in terms of wage growth and unemployment, give me over 200,000 number. That's what I want to see. Well, I think that'll be okay for the market.
I think for the market, it's a right down the middle number that it's looking for.
So 200,000. You have to remember, we had a trade truce at the time or right after this happened, meaning that China already knew, I think, that this arrest happened in Canada, went back after the G20 summit, and then said that there was some form of trade truce after this happened. And Huawei has been investigated for a very long time, so it shouldn't be a surprise.